Daf Yomi, Tractate Shevuos, page 17a. Now, in this daf, there are four tekus. Teku is an unresolved question, a question that is remains unanswered until the coming of the Messiah, and Elijah the prophet will give us the answers, and probably the Messiah himself, possibly the Messiah himself as well, maybe soon in our day. And there's a rabbi who I mention frequently by the name of Rabbi Aharon Yehoshua Pessin. I think that he lives in Ramat Beit Shemesh. And he put together a book, which I'm sure it's in regular form, but I have it in online form. It is a compilation of all of the tekus in Shas. He went from the very first one in Masechtas Brachos on Daf Ches Amud Aleph, the bottom of the page, about 2 lines from the bottom, and he goes all the way until the end in Nida, Daf 63. I don't remember now, A or B, but he catalogs every single teku and numbers them, and he came out with 317 exactly tekus. And I don't know because some how exact that is, because some tekus there are a few part teku. I don't know if he counts every single question or just every single time it only says the word teku, because some tekus have a 4-part question, at least from what I remember. But at any rate, he counts out 317, and so we are now according to his count. Now I noticed that he in the Daf Yomi after Sanhedrin we went to Makos, but in his book I don't know why he goes Sanhedrin and he does Shevuos before Makos. I don't know why that is, but at first I thought I'm going to do both. And I might do both, meaning according to the Daf Yomi way and according to his way, but for now I'm going according to his way because he had the initiative to put together this book, and so he had the inspiration. It was probably inspired him in the Shemayim, and so I'm going to go according to him and say that, for example, if you put, to explain this, if you put Shevuos before Makos, then the 189th teku is going to come before. It would if you put Makos first, even though there's only 2 tekus in Makos, but so according to his book on this daf, there's actually 4 tekus. There's the 189th teku, the 190th, the 191, and the 192, 191st and 192nd tekus in Shas according to his count. And with that, we're on the bottom of 16b with Rava's question. Rava raises a dilemma: is tarrying long enough to bow down necessary to incur lashes? If one was warned not to remain in the temple courtyard in a state of impurity, is he liable to receive lashes only if he remains there long enough to bow down, completely spread out on the ground, or is tarrying not necessary to incur lashes, and he is immediately liable to receive lashes? In other words, does he have to wait a little bit, or is it the second he's there, he's already, which in itself is kind of a moot point, because, it would take him at least a few seconds to get out of there. So, which is another question. If he started running, is that considered that he's out of there? But anyway, that's different. That's my own thing. But anyway, the Gemara clarifies the 2 possibilities. Is it learned as a tradition that waiting is necessary in order to incur liability to bring an offering, but not learned as a tradition that waiting is necessary to become liable for lashes? Is there a difference between bringing an offering for unintentional or lashes for intentional? And that takes us now to the top of 17a with the words Odilma. Odilma, or maybe, perhaps, Bifnim Gemiri Shehia Lo Shna L'Korban V'lo Shna L'Malkus Teku. This is Teku number 189. Or perhaps it is learned as a tradition that tarrying is necessary to incur any liability for impurity within the temple, and it is no different whether the liability is to bring an offering, and it is no different whether to receive lashes. The Gemara concludes, the dilemma shall stand unresolved until the coming of the Messiah. Okay, next. Now we're going on to Teku number 190 in Shas, according to Rabbi Aharon Yehoshua Pessin. So the 190th Teku is Rava's dilemma. Again, if an impure person suspended himself in the airspace of the temple, I don't know how he suspended himself. Does he know how to levitate? Is that? If he suspended himself in the airspace of the temple courtyard long enough to bow down, what is the halacha? When it is learned as a tradition that an impure person is liable for tarrying in the temple, is this only with regard to tarrying that is suited for bowing, but with regard to waiting that is not suited for bowing, as in this case where the person cannot bow down as long as he is suspended in the air? It is not learned, maybe it was on stilts. It is not learned as a tradition that one is liable, or perhaps it is learned as a tradition that there is liability for tarrying within the temple, and it is no different whether the tarrying is suited for bowing, and it is no different whether the tarrying is not suited for bowing. The Gemara concludes, Teku. It's Teku 190. Now for the 191st Teku. Boyavashi, Timeas bemezin ma'u, be'oinis g'mirashio, bemezin lo g'mirashio, oidil ma b'fnim g'mirashio, lo ishna b'oinis, lo ishna b'mezi, Teku. Rav also raises a dilemma relating to this matter. If one intentionally rendered himself ritually impure while he was in the temple courtyard, what is the halacha with regard to tarrying? Is it learned as a tradition that tarrying is necessary when one contracts impurity while in the temple in circumstances beyond his control, but not learned as a tradition that tarrying is necessary when he renders himself impure intentionally? Or perhaps it is learned as a tradition that tarrying is necessary for any liability for impurity within the temple, and that it is no different whether the impurity was contracted in circumstances beyond his control, and it is no different whether it was contracted intentionally. The Gemara concludes, the dilemma shall stand unresolved. And now for 192, and the final one for today. Boy Ravashi, no zilmikevel boy, shehion valikus, o einot tzorich, ifnim gemirishio, v'chutz lo gemirishio, oi dilma, v'oines gemirishio, lo ishna bifnim, lo ishna v'chutz, Teku. Rav Ashi raises another dilemma. If a Nazirite who is prohibited from contracting impurity imparted by a corpse found himself alongside a grave, is tarrying there a necessary condition for him to incur lashes, or is tarrying not necessary and he's liable immediately? What about the third option? What about he can tarry there for as long as he wants because he's already impure? He didn't mention that one. That's my own take. But anyway, he's liable immediately. Is it learned as a tradition that tarrying is necessary within the temple, but not learned as a tradition that tarrying is necessary outside the temple, and the Nazirite is liable immediately? Or perhaps it is learned as a tradition that tarrying is necessary for liability for impurity contracted in circumstances beyond one's control, and it is no different whether the impurity was contracted within the temple, and it is no different whether it was contracted outside the temple. The Gemara concludes, the dilemma shall stand unresolved. Okay. Balo be'aluka chayav, and that was 192. And that will park there for now until, God willing, I think it's Shevuos 22. Balo be'aluka chayav v'ktzor paton v'kulei. Amar v'ktzor she'amru afilu akev b'tzad gudal afilu kol hayom kulo. The Mishnah teaches, if at the time that one was unaware, either that he was impure or that he was in the temple, he went out by way of a longer route when he could have taken a shorter route, he is liable to bring a sliding scale offering. But if he left the temple via the shortest way, he is exempt. Rava says, with regard to the short route, which the sages said here, that he is exempt for, this does not necessarily mean that he left the temple as quickly as possible, as if he took the most direct route, he is exempt even if he walked with exceedingly small steps, heel to toe, and even if it took him all day long. Boy Rava asks the question, but it's not going to result in teku. Interesting. This is my own kind of ongoing quandary, that is there an intentionality behind these tekus, where they're placed, because you'll find that for many daf you won't see a teku, and then all of a sudden you'll get 4 on one page like we did today, and it's not the first time it happened. I mean, we had that in, I think it was either Baba Basra or Sanhedrin, maybe. I think it was Baba Basra. It was like 4 or 5, whatever, in one page. And then there's none for many pages. Why is that? And who can answer that? Well, the quest goes on. Vayrava shiyos maho shitstarafu tipshoitle mididei hasamdila sheha. Rava raised a dilemma. What is the halacha with regard to combining periods of tearing, each of which is less than the amount of time necessary to recite the second portion of the verse mentioned above, 2 Chronicles 7:3. If an impure person tarried in the temple for less than the amount of time needed to bow down, and then started to leave, and then tarried again for less than the amount of time needed to bow down, do those 2 periods of tarrying combine together so that if he tarries in total long enough to bow down, he is liable? The Gemara challenges. Let Rava resolve his dilemma from his own statement with regard to one who left the temple with small steps, heel to toe, as such a person tarries intermittently between steps. The Gemara answers there, Rava is referring to one who did not tarry at all, walking continuously without interruption, albeit slowly. Excuse me. When Rava raised his dilemma here, it was with regard to one who stopped walking altogether and tarried. Although he may tarry, even so, I will wait for him. Boy Rava, boy mine Rava. Boila, bolo aluka shir katsarmau. Shir gamir bala. Shir gamir bala maruka shir katsarbata. Madama Daf Yomi beruka chayim katsarbata amalei. Madina aluka ledagas. That's fine. Abai raised a dilemma to Rava. That is the very opposite of the dilemma raised by Rava. If the impure person quickly went out by the longer way, in the measure of time ordinarily needed to go out in the shortest way, what is the halacha? Is it learned as a tradition that he is liable for tarrying for a certain measure of time, and if he went out the longer way, the measure of time that ordinarily needed to go out the shortest way is exempt? Or perhaps it's learned as a tradition, specifically that if he left the longer way is liable, whereas if he lives the shortest way, he's exempt. Is it like just the longer way or the shorter way, period? Or does it go by the amount of time? Rava said to Abaye, the liability for leaving using the longer way was not given so that it would be overridden for him. In other words, he is liable if he exits via the longer way, even if he runs. Even if it took shorter time. It's just you took the longer way, you automatically, but probably it wouldn't be shorter. If it's a longer way, I can't imagine it taking shorter than a shorter way. But at any rate, Vital. What are we holding here? Even if he runs right. Masker lo bezera. Ela de kaimelan tamim shishimish b'misa. Heich mishkachas lo id lo shah. Heich yavad avoida idisha ba koitzu. Rabbi Zera objects to this. But as for this halacha, that we maintain that an impure priest who intentionally served in the temple is liable to receive the punishment of death at the hand of heaven, how can you find these circumstances? If he did not tarry in the temple long enough to bow down, how could he have performed any service in such a short period of time? And if he tarried long enough to bow down, he is liable to be punished with karet, which is a more severe punishment than death at the hand of heaven. I thought they were the same thing. I guess apparently not. Death at the hand of heaven is not karet. I mean, death at the hand. I guess death at the hand is just dying. Let's say before his time, but karet is being cut off, even after death. Okay. Rabbi Zera explains his objection. Granted, if you say that it is learned as a tradition that one is liable for tarrying for a certain measure of time, and if he did not tarry for the time it takes to bow down and leave the temple via the shortest way, he is exempt, then you can find a case where the priest could have served in a state of impurity without becoming liable to be punished with karet. The case is where he exerted himself and ran out very quickly via the shortest way after having performed a service in a state of impurity, so that the total time that he was in the temple was less time than it would ordinarily take him to bow and leave the shortest way. Wow, I have to see that in action. It's kind of hard to imagine that, but I guess, who knows. In such a case, he is exempt from being punished with karet and liable only to be punished with death at the hand of heaven for having performed the temple service while impure. And now we turn to Daf Yud Zayin and Beis 17b. For those who have physical Gemaras, and if you're on a computer, you can scroll down or scroll up or sideways or however it is. To 17b with the words Ela iyam letaf gemire hech But if you say that it is learned as a tradition, specifically that if an impure person tarries long enough to bow down, he is liable even if he does not exceed the time required to go out the shortest way, then how can you find these circumstances? Amar Abaye, my kushya mishachas lagagoyin. Sheba bekitzro, Yava betzinoira, Chedrav huna, Derav huna, Zol shehapach betzinoira chayv misa. Abaye said, what is the difficulty? If you find it in a case such as where he went out from the temple via the shortest way, but as he was leaving, he turned over one of the limbs of an offering on the altar with a fork. This is an action that takes only a brief moment to perform, and yet it is considered priestly service, in accordance with the opinion of Rav Huna. As Rav Huna says, a non-priest who turns over part of an offering on the altar with a fork is liable to receive the death penalty, because he engaged in temple service restricted to priests, Gufa Amav Huna Zo Shibech B'Tzinoira Chayav Miso Hechidami Ide lo hafach la lo mi'ikali Pshita Ide lo hafach behu Nami'ikali mai ka'avid. The Gemara proceeds to analyze the matter itself. Rav Huna says a non-priest who turns over part of an offering on the altar with a fork is liable to receive the death penalty. What are the circumstances of such a case? If, in the event that he had not turned it over, the offering would not have been consumed by the fire, then it is obvious that the non-priest is liable, as he performed the service of burning the offering on the altar. And if, in the event that he had not turned it over, it would also have been consumed by the fire, then what service did he perform? Even without his action, the offering would have been burned. Lo yitzricha, di lo hafach behu, mikale betadi shai, v'yashtu mikale b'chad shaito, v'yokomosh pelon, d'chol kol boida boidei. The Gemara answers no. It is necessary for Rav Huna to state this halacha with regard to a case where, had the non-priest not turned it over, it would have been consumed by the fire in 2 hours. But now that he turned it over, it is consumed by the fire in 1 hour. And he teaches us this, that any act that accelerates the service, causing it to be performed more quickly, is itself considered a service. Amar Yehoshua be'ena de'ema milsa u'mistafena mechaveraya hanichnas lebeit hamenuga lebayis hamenuga derech choirav afilu kulo chutz michotmo taor dichsiv v'haba el habayis derech bia isratayra. The Gemara returned to the general topic of one who enters the temple while in a state of ritual impurity, citing Rabbi Yehoshua, who said, I wish to say something, but I am afraid of my colleagues, meaning I am afraid that they will raise an objection against me. What did he want to say? With regard to one who enters a house afflicted with leprosy, if he enters the house backward, then even if his entire body entered except for his nose, which remained outside the house, he remains pure. As it is written, he that enters into the house, all the time that it is shut up shall be impure until evening. Leviticus 14:46, teaching that the Torah prohibited, meaning the Torah conferred impurity only with regard to the normal manner of entering into a house, meaning face first. So I don't understand what the problem is. Why just not his nose? Why not his nose also? If it's backwards, then good question. Umistafin mechaverai. Umistafin mechaverai. Iyach ikoinami amarava kulo lo gara mikelim shebebayis iksiv lo yitma kol asher bebayis. But I'm afraid of my colleagues, as they might raise the following objection. If so, that the impurity depends on the person entering the house in the normal manner, that even if his entire body enters the house, that was my question, exactly. If so, that the impurity depends on the person entering the house in the normal manner, then even if his entire body entered the house, he would also be pure, as he did not go into the house in normal fashion. Rava said, this is not difficult. Because Rava is defending Yehoshua. As if his entire body entered in this manner, he is impure. Because he is no worse now, meaning that his halacha should not be more lenient than vessels that are in the house, which become impure, as is written, and they shall empty the house, so that all that is in the house shall not be made impure. Okay, so I guess he infers from that Leviticus 14:36, that basically that whatever is in the house is impure. So if you're in the house, you're impure. but it has to be just a little bit outside, so you're not fully in the house. If that's the case, you should. It's hard to do it the other way around. But anyway, Tanya Namiyachi Ganin Alalu. Oichlin Sham Kachi Kadashim. Shoichtin Sham Kachim Kalim. The Tamish Nichnas Derech Nagin Ganin. No. Gagin Hechel Patul. Shenemar Ver Mikdash Lo Savoy. Der Via Sotayra. The Gemara comments, this is also taught in Braita, in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehoshua, that wherever entering is mentioned in the Torah, the reference is to the normal manner of entering with regard to those roofs that cover the various chambers found in the temple courtyard. Offerings of the most sacred order may not be eaten there on them, and offerings of lesser sanctity may not be slaughtered there, because those roofs do not have the sanctity of the temple courtyard, and a ritually impure person who enters the sanctuary via those roofs is exempt, as it is stated with regard to a woman who became ritually impure, and she shall not enter into the sanctuary, Leviticus 12:4, teaching that the Torah prohibited only the normal manner of entering the temple. So too in the case of a house afflicted with leprosy, where mention is made of entering, only one who enters into the house in the normal manner becomes impure, as stated by Rabbi Oshaya. Zohi mitzvah saseh b'mikdash she'er chayavin olea v'chulei hechi koi deka'amar zohi hasam koi ein chayavin al aseh ve'alo taseh sheb'mikdash. The Mishnah teaches this mitzvah that the ritually impure must be sent out of the temple is the positive mitzvah concerning the temple, for which the Sanhedrin is not liable to bring a bull offering for an erroneous ruling. The Gemara asks, to what does the Tana of the Mishnah refer when he says this is a positive mitzvah concerning the temple for which the Sanhedrin is not liable to bring a bull offering for an erroneous ruling? Where was it taught that there is such a mitzvah for which they are not liable? The Gemara answers he is referring to a Mishnah found there in Tractate Horayot 8b, which teaches the Sanhedrin is not liable to bring a bull offering for an erroneous ruling with regard to a positive mitzvah or prohibition concerning ritual impurity in the temple, as this offering is brought only for an erroneous ruling on a matter whose unwitting violation requires the bringing of a fixed sin offering and not a sliding scale offering. The Mishnah there continues, and one who is uncertain whether or not he unwittingly transgressed a prohibition that requires a sin offering does not bring a provisional guilt offering for a positive mitzvah or prohibition concerning ritual impurity in the temple, as this offering is brought only when certainty about the unwitting transgression would require a fixed sin offering, not a sliding scale offering. Unwitting transgression of a mitzvah concerning ritual impurity in the temple results in an obligation to bring a sliding scale offering. The Mishnah there continues, but the Sanhedrin is liable to bring a bull offering for an erroneous ruling with regard to a positive mitzvah or a prohibition concerning a menstruating woman, and one who is uncertain whether or not he unwittingly transgressed a prohibition that requires a sin offering brings a provisional guilt offering for a positive mitzvah or prohibition concerning a menstruating woman. V'ka'amal zoi mitzvah saseh shiba mikdash she'en chayovin aleho v'zoi mitzvah saseh shiba nida chayovin aleho היה משמש עם התורה ואמרה לו נטמאתי ופירש ביד חייב מפני שיצא ענה לו כביעשה. We had this before, but I don't understand it. So I'll read it again, but so many questions. Okay. Anyway, they're saying here that is it in reference to the Mishnah that the Tana in the Mishnah here says this mitzvah that the ritually impure must be sent out of the temple is the positive mitzvah concerning the temple for which the Sanhedrin is not liable to bring a bull offering for an erroneous ruling, which is the positive mitzvah with regard to a menstruating woman for which the Sanhedrin is liable to bring a bull offering for an erroneous ruling. If a man was engaging in intercourse with a ritually pure woman, and during the course of their active intercourse, she experienced menstrual bleeding and said to him, I have become impure, and unwittingly he immediately withdrew from her and did not wait until his wiener became flaccid, he is liable to bring a sin offering for engaging in intercourse with a menstruating woman, because his withdrawal from her is as pleasant as his entry. I don't see why not. I would think that that's like frustration city. You know what I'm saying? It's not pleasant, but he withdrew, and he's still, you know what I'm saying, good to go. I mean, he's got to complete it somehow. So I don't understand what's going on there. But anyway, if the Sanhedrin mistakenly ruled that one may withdraw immediately, they bring a bull offering for their erroneous ruling. Erroneous ruling, erroneous ruling. Itmar, we learned about Amar Mishmei de Rav Chia Barav Chayiv Shtayim Chen Amar Rave Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Sheba. I've never seen that one before. Bar Sheba. Amar Rav Huna Chayiv Shtayim Chada Knisa v'Chadat Rishon. The Gemara further clarifies the matter of a man who immediately withdrew from the woman after she told him that she had experienced menstrual bleeding. It was stated that Abaya says, in the name of Rabbi Chia bar Rav, he is liable to bring 2 sin offerings for this unwitting transgression. And so, Rava says that Rav Shmuel bar Sheba says, that Rav Huna says he is liable to bring 2 sin offerings, and one for his initial entry, and one for his immediate withdrawal. Have ba Rabba b'mai Iglema Samachla Evista Uveman, Iglema Betam Chacham, Bishnoma Kanis Lachayav, Kusava Chichonon Liboy, Prisha Mai Chayab Mezidu. Rava discusses this matter and raises a question about what case are we speaking? If we say that it was near her expected date of menstruation, when sexual intercourse is prohibited due to concern that the woman might already be menstruating or that she might begin to menstruate during the act of intercourse, and nevertheless they engage in intercourse, there's a difficulty. With whom are we dealing? If we say that we are dealing with a Torah scholar, granted that he will be liable to bring a sin offering for his initial entry, that was an unwitting transgression. As he thought to himself, I can engage in intercourse with her before she begins to menstruate, but why will he be liable to bring a sin offering for his immediate withdrawal? That transgression was intentional, since he is a Torah scholar and he knows that in such a case he must not withdraw immediately, and the sin offering is not brought for an intentional transgression. I don't quite get it, but anyway, that's that.